So what's up there, YouTube? Back at it again. Looks like we've got another video from our buddy, angry photographer, coming back at you with an attack on the Nikon Z9, which he apparently again does not like. So he likes it, but then he doesn't like it. He claimed. I'm going to get right to the point here because it's getting kind of silly. I felt almost bad for him. When I watched the video, it was almost cringeworthy. So he says he has a buddy who's had the camera for a month, and only a few people have had the camera for longer than a couple days. By the way, there's only a few people. Ricci Talks is one of them. He's had it for 3 months. And he doesn't talk about any of the things that angry photographer is talking about. And the things that he talked about was he seems to claim he attacked the buffer. We'll get into this right now because it's kind of silly. So he attacked the buffer and said that the 20 frames per second only got like 35 shots. But if you do a search, you can go ahead on there right now and go to Adorama and B&H, who, yeah, they're selling the camera. So technically they're going to want to upsell, and make it sound, but they're not going to make up numbers and just randomly make up stuff. Both of them, I believe it was B&H that the photographer there was shooting birds and wildlife and stuff like that. And he said, sports, he could shoot RAW and JPEG. So a combination RAW and JPEG at 20 frames per second, virtually unlimited buffer. He said virtually an unlimited, but you can watch the video. He said a virtually unlimited buffer. He could photograph a football player coming all the way down the field and making a touchdown. So that doesn't sound like just 20 shots, like just a quick burst, like the angry photographer is trying to make it sound like you can only shoot it for a couple seconds at that speed. Maybe his friend was shooting with the slowest CF Express cards possible, because several people have already claimed, Matt Granger, I think it was DP Review, those guys. There was somebody else. There was another one that I saw that claimed that he realized quickly that the cards needed to be faster. That the cards, it might have been Ricci Talks, that he noticed the first thing. It was Ricci Talks. He said that he noticed the buffer getting full with a slower card, and that you needed the minimum speed to be faster, because all CF Express cards are not equal. So it's much more dependent on the speed of the CF card to offload the images. With 45, almost 46 megapixel images, it's close to 50 megapixel images. So for images that large in RAW, to be able to offload them, you need a really, really fast. It's not the CPU processor. It has something to do with that, but it's not just CPU power that offloads the images. The speed of the card. You're running into the camera so fast that it's running into the limits of the CF Express card slot. Not the slot, but the cards themselves. It's possible, angry photographer's friend, who's had the camera for a month now, he claims, but he doesn't say who it is. It's possible that guy was shooting with a slower, say, XQD card, and he wasn't shooting with the latest CF Express fast cards, the latest cards. And possibly he was hitting a buffer. Do I think it was like just the one shot, the 120 frames or 35 frames is what he said? No, I don't think so. Sounds like he's pulling random numbers out of his behind. But anyway, the guy on B&H, one guy on Adorama, one guy on B&H, one said it was virtually unlimited. The other guy said that he shot 1,000 frames at 20 frames per second before he stopped. So that doesn't sound like 30 frames or 35 frames to me. It sounds like somebody's doing something different, and they're not just making up stuff because they're selling cameras. And then, of course, Theory is going to go in some random rant about affiliate links again, because he's constantly talking about affiliate links. I've got no affiliate links. So does that mean that I'm, more trustworthy than somebody else? No, I'm looking at the thing. Just because you have an affiliate link doesn't make you untrustworthy, right? Just because you have an affiliate link. I'm cleaning one of my ND filters here. I wiped off an ND filter with a microfiber cloth. Just because you have an affiliate link doesn't mean you're just going to automatically lie about the camera. And most of the people with affiliate links are for other stuff, like not even the camera. Some of it's for like Squarespace or different things, different affiliate stuff that is supporting the channel. So just because you have an affiliate link, he just keeps going on and on about affiliate link. He loves to bash on people for having affiliate links. I don't care, but let's get back to some of these other these crazy things. Also, he went on a rant about the sensor not being digital, that all sensors are analog. Duh. Nobody's claiming. I didn't see any. I watched a bunch of videos yesterday and today, and not once did I see anybody claim that it was a digital sensor. Not once. I don't know what he's talking about. It's like when people want to have something to complain about and they make up something as if other people are complaining about this as being a thing. Nobody's complaining about this being a thing. Nobody's saying, oh man, nobody's claiming it to have a digital sensor. But what it does have, and I'll tell you something that I noticed that the Z9 has, and this was an amazing thing. Ricci was talking to Ricci Talks. I'll put a link for his video down below. He's fantastic. He was talking to one of the photographers that shoots with D850 and several other cameras over the years, and she was trying to learn. She shoots out of a moving car and stuff like that. You can watch the video, but he was talking about how the automatic tracking on the Z9 was unique to a Z9 over any of the other competition, the Canon EOS R3 or the Sony A1. Neither one of them do this. Those cameras you have to pick if you want to track people, if you want to track animals, if you want to track vehicles. And the vehicle one on the R3, it isn't anywhere near as advanced as on the Nikon. There is one thing, it has a spot focus thing on the R3 that's kind of cool. You can pick like the helmet, but like if it's a motorcycle rider, you can pick his helmet and it will focus more on his helmet, but they also do that too. There's a way to do it in the in the Z9 also, to focus on the helmet. So it focuses on the vehicle and then you can make it focus on the helmet. But what the Z9 does that the other cameras don't do is you can set it to automatic focus tracking and like 3D tracking, but automatic. So it will automatically pick people, vehicles, birds, animals, eyes, of the different things based on what comes into the frame. So if you're shooting a car and it's tracking a car, the car stops, somebody gets out, it'll automatically start detecting the person. Now, here's the cool part. On the Z9, you can actually tell it what you want it to prioritize before you start shooting. So if you're shooting somebody driving up in a car, you want it to focus on the car. Say they're driving real fast and they get out, but you want it to prioritize people. It will still focus on the car and it will still track the car. When the car stops and a person gets out, as soon as it recognizes the person, it will start focusing on the person and detecting their eye. Even after that point, it gives you an arrow. You can hit the thumb button and go back to the car at any time that you want to. So even though it's prioritized on the person, you can automatically click back over and do the car. If a dog came in the frame and you wanted it to prioritize on animals, because a dog was going to run up to the person that was driving the car and they were going to hug, he's going to hug the dog or something like that, you could have it prioritize on animals so that as soon as the animal came in the frame, it would jump from the person or the car to the animal and then track the animal. It's got the artificial intelligence in the Z9 is better than any other camera on the market. It automatically can detect all those different things without having to pick it beforehand, and you can prioritize which one you want it to do. So that's simply amazing. When people don't have the camera, I don't have the camera. I'm not going to claim I've held the camera, I've done something, but I just find it funny. that the guy that said the D500 was the greatest DSLR ever made, and ranted and raved, and the D850 was the great crop sensor camera ever made, and that the D850 was a great camera. The same guy that bashed the Z6 and Z7 for being consumer grade cameras with single card slots, and that's why it's a consumer junk. And every time they come out with a camera, oh, it's a consumer junk. When Nikon comes out with a pro body that's ridiculously a pro body compared to any other mirrorless camera, even with the shutter, even the Fujis don't have a shutter that comes down in front of it. Of course, he'll ignore that, not a shutter, but a curtain that covers the sensor. He'll ignore that. But when Nikon comes out with something that's ridiculous, he jumps to the hinge and a cable going in the back. Somehow this is going to cause condensation, and he's just rambling on to other stuff. Yeah, there's ways of sealing that cable. I don't know if you know this or not, but for years there's been cables going into things that are completely waterproof, and they stay waterproof and they don't get condensation. And there's ways of attaching the cable with a rubber connector that attaches to a connector, and then another connector on the opposite side that's sealed off so that it doesn't. I don't understand how this guy is supposed to be, has any type of engineering type of mentality, and still fails to see that you can actually not have the cable go through a hole into the body and have it go. Maybe there's a connector on both sides that's sealed, and it's locked onto a connector so that it's not actually a hole going into the. It's just ridiculous. I don't even know why I'm coming on here and doing this. I'm coming on because I had one of my viewers made a claim about this, and I didn't even watch it. I don't subscribe to his channel. I don't watch his ridiculous rants. And Fro did a pretty decent thing, but I could tell it was kind of eating Fro up to admit that this is like, maybe he should have waited a little bit longer before jumping the ship on Nikon and going to Sony or Canon or whatever, or both. It looks like he went to both because he's got Canons in the shooting his videos, and then Sony's out on the field. So I think almost like he kind of regrets jumping ship on the Nikons, because this camera is so good. It's so ridiculously good that he's, oh no, I don't know if I should. So he praised the camera throughout his entire video, but then at the end he says it's not going to attract people from Sony or people that jump ship. And that may be true, but it might not, because just as quickly as you jump ship from one to the other, he was a lifetime Nikon shooter from the time he was young, and he jumped ship with all these lenses and all this stuff. So he hasn't been, invested in Sony and Canon for 10, 15, 20 years, and now trying to jump ship to Nikon. He's just started, so he doesn't have a humongous array of lenses for the Canons and Sonys. So for him to jump ship would be a lot easier for somebody that just jumped from Nikon to Sony or Canon within the past 2 years to switch back to Nikon, because it's not that big of a deal. They obviously don't have, you might get people that have a massive amount of, lenses and stuff already for the Canons and Sonys. Speaking of that, I was watching a video. I didn't keep up with the Sony A1 information very much, but I looked at it here and there, and I watched the Sony A1 videos, and I went back and watched some again, because I was thinking, okay, what's this camera competing with? The R3 and the A1 is the two biggest ones. Number one, the R3 is a 24 megapixel. It's not even in the same ballpark. Yeah, it shoots 30 frames per second, but it's only shooting 24 megapixel. The Sony A1 doesn't shoot 30 frames per second if you use adapted lenses. Now the Nikon will shoot the 20 frames per second with any adapted lens, with an F-mount adapted lens. So you can use FTZ, throw on any lens, and it'll still shoot 20 frames per second. The Sony drops way down to 15 frames per second if you use anything but the Sony E-mount lens, and only certain Sony E-mount lens, like the latest ones. even some of their other lenses, apparently, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I know that any adapted lens on the Sony will not shoot at the 30 frames per second. So there's some kind of limitation with the lens also. I guess focusing, it can't focus as fast with other lenses. And every review I've seen, or every preview I've seen of the Z9, it focused just as fast with any adapted lens as it did with the S lenses, with the Nikon Z mount lenses. Wait till the Z8 comes out. The Z8 will probably be 45 megapixels or less and shoot way more frames per second. I bet you the Z8 will shoot, will be like 30 something megapixels and shoot, 60 frames per second, 60 frames per second, raw or something, something ridiculous. I don't know yet, but it's a pretty good assumption that Nikon's back on top here, because it's pretty easy to see that Nikon did not play around when it came to coming out with a camera. They literally did what I said in my other video. You woke a sleeping giant, and they said, that's it. We're going to throw everything we possibly can at this camera, give you everything you possibly wanted, and then some. And then we're going to make it just ridiculously, and we're going to make it cheaper than the R3. I mean, what the heck? Cheaper than the R3 and cheaper than the competition. Cheaper. So it's an amazing camera. I can't wait for the next ones to come out. Like I said, I'm not going to buy a Z9. I think it's a fantastic camera. I would buy one if I was in the market for that camera, but I'm not. So I'm not going to buy one. But I'm not going to sit here and bash it, and I'm not going to just completely praise it either. Okay. Let's get to the non-praising part. I think the EVF should have had a higher res EVF. I think it looks great. But Matt Granger made a good point. He said, I think it was Matt Granger. It might have been Ricci Talks. One of the I've watched so many lately, I forget. One of the reviewers, or first look people, said that what they noticed was, even though it's not as sharp as say the Sony or the Canon EVF, it's much brighter than either of them. It's much brighter. And you say, well, what good is that? What's good is a brighter EVF? How does that help me? Well, how that helps you is, if you're one of these shooters that keeps your other eye open, like if you're shooting sports and wildlife, a lot of people that shoot sports and wildlife keep both eyes open when they look through the EVF. If it's bright outside, it's hard to see a much darker EVF and track it. So in other words, there's a big difference. You can see the difference, even though it's as clear as what you're seeing almost as your naked eye. It's not nearly as bright. It's much darker, so it's harder to keep track of. It looks like you're looking at two different images. They said that it seemed much easier to track in sunlight because the EVF was so much brighter. So maybe that's why Nikon went with a lower, refresh rate EVF, and a lower, it's like 60 frames per second EVF refresh rate or something like that. It's a slower EVF just to make it so much brighter, so that if the camera's for sports and wildlife mostly, it's super fast. So to have that, the reason why they wanted it like that is to have a brighter screen, so that when you're using it with two eyes, it's not a distraction to have one much lower. Anyway, that's all. I just wanted to do a little quick rant. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think it's just ridiculous? I think again, we've got the same Nikon bashers out here trying to look for anything to bash them over when they're coming out with something ridiculously good as this. And my hat's off to Nikon for not playing their game and just saying we're gonna just come out with the most ridiculous camera we can and just put it out there and see what you guys think. Anyway, I'm out. Holler at you later, YouTube. Take it easy. See ya. Have a good weekend. And happy Halloween.